If you've ever tried to explain OCD to someone and they've looked at you like you're being dramatic, or they've laughed or said everyone's a bit OCD, or told you to just stop thinking about it, then this episode really is for you. Because when people don't understand OCD, it doesn't just feel annoying, it can feel humiliating, isolating, and it can make your symptoms get a lot worse. And here's the twist. The biggest danger isn't their ignorance. It's what it tricks you into doing next. It pulls you into proving, persuading, defending, explaining, and that can become its own form of rumination. So today, I'm going to give you a different path. How to handle mockery, minimize the damage, and stop needing other people to actually get it in order for you to start moving forward with OCD in your life. When I first started to tell people in my life about OCD, people did not get it at all. We're talking about more than 25 years ago, and back then there wasn't so much information about OCD, but even now people do not get it. When I started to open up, I would tell people that I would be stuck thinking about these things for hours at a time, or getting huge anxiety and feeling very frustrated because all of the things I was doing to try to stop it was actually making it worse. And people would sometimes laugh at me. People would say things like, oh, just ignore it. Just let it go. Things are all right. Your life is good. Be happy. But of course, OCD has this horrible way of manipulating us and making us want to think about things more and more. And so when somebody that you care about tells you, hey, just stop thinking about it, or everyone's a little bit OCD, it can make you feel so belittled because the thing that you're working so hard to deal with is obviously causing you so much distress in your life. People are just kind of downplaying it and saying it's not a big thing. That can be incredibly frustrating and hard to deal with. I think part of the problem here isn't that it's just socially kind of annoying to hear that from people. It's also the kind of shame and the rumination. When people tell you it should be so easy, then of course we start putting more pressure on ourselves. And most people with OCD are already putting enormous pressure on themselves. And then the rumination starts to come. If other people can do it, why can't I? And it becomes another part of the OCD. The first thing to understand is that being misunderstood, it really does hurt so much because OCD is already wrapped in shame, and shame doesn't need a lot of fuel. When someone mocks it, your nervous system reads it as social danger. I'm unsafe in some way, I'm weird, I'm alone. And then your brain does what it always does with danger. It tries to fix it in some way. You start replaying what they said, imagining what you should have said, trying to convince them, trying to prove that you're not ridiculous. And suddenly, you're not just dealing with OCD, you're dealing with the aftershock of shame. And that's why this isn't just a social issue, it's a recovery issue. I think something that we have to learn to do here is to normalize these things, to recognize that it makes complete sense that it's very uncomfortable, that it's very painful when you hear these things, and that actually that's okay. You're not bad, or you're not doing something wrong, because it hurts when people kind of talk about OCD and anxiety in these ways. Actually, it's very normal that you're responding in that way. And, when you are responding, it's important to acknowledge it, to feel that pain, that shame, that hurt, but to not get lost in it, to realize that, that person simply does not understand OCD. And even if you spend hours trying to explain it to them, perhaps they still wouldn't understand, because a lot of people are not able to actually understand it. Because a lot of people are not able to understand it unless they've actually been through something similar themselves. Ultimately, it's about learning how to feel that hurt, but not getting lost in it. Acknowledging its presence, allowing it to be there, but moving on with your day, trying not to to focus so much on what other people think, because unfortunately, a lot of people do not understand mental health problems. So here's the trap. You think the solution is to explain OCD better, but often the act of explaining becomes the compulsion itself. Not always, but very often, because you're not explaining from a kind of calm and confident place. You're explaining from urgency. You're trying to get more certainty. Please understand me so I can finally feel okay. And the moment your peace depends on their reaction, you've handed them your nervous system. You've given away your power. Some people will listen to that, sure, but a lot of people won't. And if you keep trying to convert the wrong audience, you end up drained, angry, and even more stuck in your head looking for that certainty. There's a huge difference here between wanting to tell people that are important to you in your life about OCD and what it's like to experience, and actually needing them to fully understand that. If you demand that they have to understand, they have to know what it's like, they have to be able to kind of feel what I feel and to know what it's like when I'm stuck in a kind of OCD cycle, you're going to constantly be frustrated, because most people are never going to actually be able to fully get there. Of course, sometimes you meet somebody that really does get it for whatever reason. Maybe they have more empathy, or they've experienced something similar themselves. But a lot of the time, they're not going to get it. But if you can, at the very least, kind of share what it's like a little bit, but from more of a kind of education standpoint, you don't need them to fully understand it. You just need them to know that sometimes you struggle. And often that is enough, because people, I think, even if they can't understand it, a lot of people want to try to understand it. If they're people that you care about, who are close to you, your friends or your family, whilst again, they may not be able to experience what it's like to be in your shoes, a lot of people with just a bit more information are able to kind of, to understand it a little bit, or, to be able to support you a bit better, or to not give you reassurance sometimes when you're really looking for it. And often that's enough to actually help you, to start dealing with your OCD better. Of course, if you find yourself compulsively looping, if there's urgency, if you're really wanting to make sure, did you definitely understand that? If you're checking their facial reactions and, whether they look kind of clear with what you've been saying, then actually all you're really doing is you're bringing OCD into it. And that's a really important sign that it's time to kind of let that go. One of the most powerful skills you can build is this: stop taking the bait emotionally, because mockery invites a reaction. Anger, proving, explaining, spiraling, and OCD loves anything that pulls you into urgency. Instead, try to treat it like a trigger. Oh, there's that urge to defend myself again. You acknowledge it, you feel the discomfort, and you choose your response based on your values, not your ego. And sometimes that response is silence. Sometimes it's kind of humor, mocking the other person lightly. Sometimes it's a boundary, but the win is the same. You don't let their misunderstanding hijack your attention for the next 3 hours, getting caught up in OCD loops because you're so frustrated that other person doesn't understand how hard OCD is. So when you're in this situation, see if you can find a way to kind of slow down a little bit. If you feel yourself getting activated, what is the activation? Are you wanting to kind of prove something? Are you wanting to convince somebody? Are you wanting them to kind of understand you completely? Whatever that urge is, if you can just simply name the urge and pause, recognize that, it's a kind of compulsive thing. You're wanting to feel better in the short term. And actually, if you play that short-term game, that is when OCD likes to kind of keep you stuck in the trap. Instead, if you can say to yourself, yeah, that has annoyed me, that has frustrated me, but you know what? I'm not going to respond to that with a compulsion. I'm going to observe it. I'm going to allow it to be there, and I'm going to refocus my attention onto something that's more important. And this leads into values. A big part of the work that I do with people is helping them to realize, well, what is actually important in my life? Because OCD has a way of getting us to focus on our fears. It's almost like we make values out of our fears because they become the most important thing. How do I make sure this doesn't happen? How do I make sure that this does happen? How am I going to have control? How am I going to feel okay? You know, when we start doing this, we're really giving away our power. The important thing is to come back to what is actually important for you, to sit down and reflect on what are your values when fear isn't present. What are the things that actually get you moving and interested in your life? Those are the things that you need to kind of come back to in that situation. Rather than trying to have certainty about this or that, try your best to refocus onto something that actually matters to you. And often when we do this, the thing that we've been ruminating on begins to kind of move back into the background, and it doesn't bother us quite so much. And then finally, this is the deeper shift that changes everything. You don't need to be understood to get better. Understanding is nice, it's very human to want it, but it's not a requirement for recovery. If you build your stability on being validated, you'll always be vulnerable to the next ignorant comment or person. But if you build your stability on your own ability to tolerate discomfort, to set boundaries, to let people be wrong, and to refocus on your life, and actually this is where real strength comes from. You can say things to yourself like, maybe they get it, maybe they don't. I don't know, and I can't know for sure. So I'm gonna have to leave that, rather than getting caught in that certainty trap. I think a really helpful thing with this is to choose your circle well. Open up to people that you really care about, people who really, will try their best to understand it. Share with them and have those people as your people that you're going to speak to about this. And when it comes to other people, maybe it's best to not share too much because as we've been talking about today, unfortunately, most people or a lot of people aren't really going to get it and perhaps won't even put in the work even to try to understand it. So if you have the people in your life that you really care about, you focus in on them, you share with them, everyone else, well, if they don't understand it, if they make an ignorant comment, perhaps it's best to just leave it because, really it's about your mental health. And if you're constantly getting caught up in debates or having to disprove things with people, really you're getting caught up in an OCD cycle, but in another sphere, in another area of life. And it's just something else that, you're wanting to have certainty about. And unfortunately, over time, that starts to steal your energy. We want to keep our energy on the things that we really care about, our values, our goals, our people, our family, our friends, all the stuff that is actually important, and to not allow that energy to be stolen by the OCD and ignorant people who do not want perhaps to even understand OCD. So many thanks. I really hope that you enjoyed that. Remember, if you are struggling with OCD and anxiety, I do have a 12-week program to help you to break free. It's based upon my own personal experiences of dealing with OCD, as well as the work that I've done with hundreds of people to help them to break free. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can head over to my website at robertjamescoaching.com and book in there for a free discovery call. There's a link in the show notes. I also have a free starter course. If you're interested in that, you can also find a link in the show notes. Many thanks, and I'll see you next time. This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.